My name is Jerry Gill. Today is September 14th, 2009. I'm visiting with Gail Gates on the Oklahoma State University campus in Stillwater, Oklahoma. This interview is for the O State Storage Project of the Oklahoma Oral History Research Program. Gail, thank you for taking time to visit with me today.
You're welcome.
I know your schedule is very, very full. But kind of what I'd like to start off, Gail, if it's okay with you, is kind of start with the beginning. Can you tell me a little bit about where you grew up, a little bit about your family, a little bit about your early life?
Oh, sure. I grew up in an academic family, actually. My father was a professor at the University of Minnesota when I was a little girl, and moved when I was 10 years old to Texas A&M. And so I grew up in College Station, went to Texas Tech for my bachelor's and master's, and then taught for a few years at South Dakota State, and then went to Penn State for my PhD.
So were there some things about your life, some values that you learned from your family that stuck with you, important to you in your life?
Well, absolutely. I mean, education was absolutely critical. Actually, a third generation. My mother's father had been a faculty member at Iowa State, so I knew that higher education was something that was very important. Also, I think that the values of working hard and being persistent in what you want to try to accomplish were also really important.
What year did you come to Oklahoma State? In
1995.
1995? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember what some of your, kind of, first of all, let me ask, is there a story about how you got to Oklahoma State?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I was actually, after my doctorate, I was teaching at the University of Missouri for a number of years, and discovered while I was there that I really enjoyed working with graduate students. That wasn't anything that I'd really thought about. And so I discovered that we had a pretty small graduate program, and so Barbara Stoker, who was my master's advisor, was here on campus in the nutritional sciences department, which is my home department, and she was the department head, and so she recruited me to come here, and I was able to work with graduate students when I came here.
Had you been to Stillwater before?
I'd been once. One of my college friends was a Stillwater friend, and my aunt and uncle taught at OU for many, 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 many years. So I'd been in Oklahoma a lot, but I'd only been to Stillwater the once before my interview. But Stillwater's a great town, a great place to raise a family. So,
what were your first impressions of OSU and the Stillwater community? Do you remember?
I just remember campus was really great. I mean, people were very welcoming, and it seemed like it would be a very supportive place to come. It was smaller than Columbia and College Station, but it's truly a college town, so that was very attractive. I knew there would be more than enough to keep you entertained.
Patricia Knab was dean at the time?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Patricia Knab was dean. Mm-hmm.
Did you talked about working at the graduate level and interested in that. Mm-hmm. Did you have an opportunity to work directly with students when you first came to Oklahoma State?
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. I worked with undergraduate and graduate students when I was here, and I was faculty member in nutritional sciences, I think until about, you have my CV, but until about 2000. And then I was asked to be assistant dean or associate dean, part-time interim, and got to know Jack Vitek, who was in my position at the time. And then when he became provost, when Dr. Keener stepped down, he asked me to consider serving in this position on an interim basis. So, but yes, I taught for a number of years.
And how has that been different for you, Gail, from faculty teaching position to more administrative position? Did you enjoy the transition?
I miss having the daily contact with students and really being able to watch their development. It's out there, yeah. It has been something that I miss. I do not miss grading papers. So I have managed to, for several years, I was active with some graduate students in the department, and then I've taught undergraduate research scholars class for a time when we decided that that would be a good thing to have at the time. And so I've had some opportunities to keep teaching, but I miss having the relationship with the student, which is actually one of the good things about the good things about working with scholar development, is I get to know some of our outstanding students through their interaction with that.
Had you had an opportunity to work with some academically gifted students before you got into the scholar program?
Yes.
That helped kind of prepare you for that?
Yes. In fact, one of the students who worked with me as an undergraduate researcher became a Truman Scholar, Kim Sasser Bandelier. And so I got to know and worked on some Wentz projects with her, and got to know about the program actually through the student involvement side. And she was and is an amazing person.
You mentioned the scholar development and recognition program here at the university. How did you first come into contact with it? What do you first recall about the program?
I remember having the Wentz program was really probably the first thing that I remember, something that I was involved with, and actually freshman researchers, because I remember I haven't had a freshman. Well, scholar development may not have been involved with freshman research at that time, probably not. So probably the Wentz program, which was a great opportunity as a faculty member to be able to offer undergraduate students the opportunity to get involved in research, which was something that I saw was very valuable as a faculty member trying to recruit future grad students. It was a great way to get them involved in research early. And then, as I mentioned, because Kim applied for the Truman, was probably the other connection, because I knew, which was an amazing experience for her.
Good. Do you remember when we formally initiated the scholar recognition program?
No, because it was after I came in, after it had been established. So that I don't think I was around, or at least not aware of it at the time.
Do you remember what some of the conversations early on about the program, what the initial goals and aspirations for the scholar program were?
Well, I think as long as I've been involved, I think the goals have been to provide assistance for some of our best students. And I think the other goal really is through those efforts to communicate to prospective students, to offer the opportunities for prospective students that they're going to be able to compete with anyone else in the country. And I think that's been really important for trying to attract talented students here. I remember, well, it's probably been 4 or 5 years ago now, trying to recruit students who were thinking about Ivy League schools. And I think it's been really important to have some of those opportunities available for students to be able to recruit them.
Do you remember some of the faculty administrators who had at that time, from some other interviews I picked up, that there were perhaps some concerns about the program and siphoning away resources that needed in other places? Do you recall some faculty having concerns or issues with the program?
Not that I really have direct knowledge about. I mean, I do hear periodically, but it really concerns about that there may be, is it fair to spend this money on a handful of students? Mm-hmm. But I don't really, since I've been involved, I really don't hear much about that.
So again, Gail, you might have told me, what year did you become first involved in it? I mean, you talk about working with Kim, but with Bob and with the program, right. When did you start working?
In the early, it was probably 2002, 3.
Well, can you describe what your participation's been, the things you've done, your involvement in the program?
Well, I serve on the Wentz Research Program Review Board. Oh, well, Bob Grauman reports to me directly is probably the most important thing. I meet once a month with Bob Spurrier and Bob Grauman, and we work together and talk about issues related to some of our top students, different kinds of top students, but some of our top students. Been involved in helping to, I was able to go on to the Cambridge class a few years ago to observe that opportunity, which I think is a really great opportunity for some of our best students to have a chance to see what going to another country to study would be like, and having some of the best faculty that we have present there.
In light of your many administrative responsibilities, what motivates you to give your time and efforts to the program? Because I'm sure there's a lot of demands.
Oh, yeah.
But in addition to, my understanding is in addition to reporting to administrative, you've personally been really engaged and involved in the program.
Oh, yeah.
And what's the motivation there?
Well, I think we really, well, for one thing, it's very rewarding to work with some of these top students and to give them opportunities to reach their potential, really. And having worked with undergraduate research students, to be able to see the excitement when the student gets involved in undergraduate research, and then going to the presentations at the end of the year of all that they've accomplished is really rewarding to see that they're able to challenge themselves and do maybe more than they thought that they could. And it's just so interesting to see how we've been allowed students to explore different interests that they have. Maybe not necessarily something related to their careers, but we have, some of our top students that come. I was just talking to a student the other day that's she's majoring in engineering and Spanish, but has wide-ranging interests, and I think to allow such talented students to be able to explore music and literature as well as engineering is really, it's a lot of fun to be able to help students achieve that.
In addition to yourself, of course, Bob Grauman, Bob Spurrier, who are others who have been champions for the program across the university? Can you list some people who have been really, emotionally engaged and involved in the program?
Well, of course, Edward Jones. I think you've talked with Edward about that program. We have had a number of faculty who have been involved, and I can't come up with a name at the moment, but I know that there have been several faculty, for example, in engineering, who have worked with Wentz students for a long time. Some of the students with the Truman program, particularly some of the faculty in agriculture, particularly agricultural economics, have been very involved in working with high talent students, encouraging them. Let's see. Those are probably the ones that come to mind the most.
How supportive is the provost office and provost been of the program?
I think the provost has been, this current provost and Jack Vitek, who was the acting provost when I first came on, have been very supportive of the program. I think it's always a challenge when we have limited resources. All the directors always would like to have more resources available. So she's certainly been very supportive of, whenever Bob thinks that he needs some additional equipment or obviously I think he would probably like to have even more resources, but so does everybody.
Absolutely.
And she's been very involved in discussions about what appropriate fundraising activities would be for the office, because it certainly seems like the Office of Scholar Development has a lot of potential. We have a number of alums and people who have given to the office through the years, which also would be very interesting people to talk with some of those donors about their motivation for giving to the office.
Gail, can you discuss the process for identifying them when they first did, like as freshmen, you identify top students? Can you talk about some how you identify those top kids to get them involved in the scholar program?
Well, I think some of the key groups of people are the recruiters that are out in the high schools working with the students. I know that through the years they have been critical in helping us to identify some potential students that would benefit from working with the Scholar Development Office, that have a number of interests, or that they would like to be changed. They've been leaders in high school and they'd like to continue to be leaders. So they've been very active. Also, we rely a lot on the advisors and the associate deans to help us identify students. Most of the colleges, I think maybe all the colleges, have some type of activity, scholars or some group of students that are outstanding students that they encourage, that they're able to identify early on and to encourage them to participate in.
Once they're identified, how do you engage students in the program? Kind of what are the components of the program and ways you get students involved?
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the ways, fairly new, relatively new in terms of scholar development, is to get the students involved in the freshman research program. All of the colleges have been willing to participate with us in the freshman research scholars program, which is just to kind of get their toes wet, to be thinking about if they would like to be active in freshman research. And then they also get involved in the class. Bob Grauman teaches a class, Windows to the World, that's very helpful in identifying students that might be particularly high talent students from the beginning. And of course, his relationship with Bob Spurrier, the students who are interested in doing the honors program also. So those are probably some of the ways to get them involved from the beginning, and then encouraging students to apply to go on the Cambridge program and participate in the Wentz research programs as they go along.
Gail, can you talk a little bit about, you've mentioned the Wentz program, and I know it changed from kind of a work-study scholarship program years ago to freshman research, and I've heard from Bob and others that it's been one of the factors that was really important in developing the scholars program and engaging them. Can you talk a little bit about the freshman research program, Wentz scholars support for that?
Okay. The Wentz research, the freshman research scholars, we'll start with that. The students apply before they come, and they submit a really brief summary of what they might be interested in studying. And then for most of the colleges, there's a class that we set up that they get together with the dean or associate dean or research director or some individual in their college who teaches them about the basics of research and introduces them to different research opportunities on campus. And then they have the opportunity to participate in a a limited research project their first year. It kind of varies depending on the program. And then many of those students, plus other students, are recruited to participate in the WENTS research program, where students write up a one-page proposal. They work on it usually with a mentor. They identify a mentor who's going to help them work on the project. And then they put together a proposal, and that gets reviewed by a committee of faculty members who review the proposals. And then we're able to fund about 40, 50 of those proposals a year, and it gives students some funds to be able to conduct more extensive research.
How much would a typical grant be?
The undergraduates, let's see, freshman research scholars, I think their scholarship is about $800 now. The WENTS, it's $4,000 that they're able to get, and they can use, if they're doing lab work, then they can use part of that to pay for some of their lab expenses, but most of it is just support for the student.
I think it was Ed Miller in our interview that mentioned that even in the college records, sometimes, as you talked about earlier, some of the faculty will actually work with them, and they'll actually produce a paper and publish a paper.
Yeah, we have had a number of students who have been able to complete their work and get it published in professional journals, which is really important and rewarding for the students to be able to do that, and helpful for the faculty to be able to get the work done.
And that is, how important, Gail, is that to building a portfolio, if you will, for students who want to go on for competition on the national scholar?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it depends on the scholarship, but certainly if they're looking to apply for Goldwater or some of the other more research-oriented, perhaps the Gates Cambridge or some of the international competitions, it's really important for them to be able to show that they've been able to carry through with the entire process of research and getting it published. And
Gail, what is your preparing a student? I guess students are sort of self-selecting themselves through the process, but as you get to that group of that look like will be good prospects for having success in interviewing for the national and international scholarship competitions, what kinds of activities, what kinds of things does OSU do to prepare them for the competition?
Well, there's the mock interviews that I think are really important to get a group of faculty together to interview the student as though when they will be going into the interview process. Of course, the work that Bob and Gail do in terms of reviewing and assisting the students with their applications, to getting those. I know Bob really challenges the students to go beyond trite answers and to really think about the responses. And I think that's really critical. He tells them that it takes a lot of work to apply, just even to submit the application, that they'll learn a lot about themselves when they're doing that. But so he works very closely. He and Gail work very closely with the students, getting their materials ready, and thinking about which students would be a good fit for what. There are some of the competitions, for example, if a student might be someone that might be interested in the Goldwater scholarship, it's really working with them from the beginning or from very early to get involved as a freshman research scholar in WENTS projects and other ways to get involved with research, or if they're thinking about the Truman, which is service, working with the students to think about how have they demonstrated that they've been involved in leadership and service activities, to be able to show a record. So it's really more than just finishing up that application at the end, but just working with them to, do they need to take more humanities courses, or would it be helpful for them to do a study abroad program, or what are the looking at the student as a total package. And Bob, with his knowledge of all of the awards programs and everything that they have, what are the things that the different programs are looking for, and trying to match the student with that and help them to develop their portfolio so that they'll be a good candidate is really important.
Something I hadn't picked up on it and see if I understood it clearly. Is some of you further along in that process, they begin to perhaps sort of move towards either Gates Cambridge Research kind of scholarship or maybe a Truman Service scholarship.
Right.
And they sort of, as they see where their interests and strengths are, they start beginning to sort themselves out into different competitions.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. Because, typically, say if you have a student who's been very focused on the hard sciences, they're not going to be someone who's going to be competing for Rhodes unless they've also been doing humanities work and been a really well-rounded person throughout the years. So, yeah, he definitely works with them and has identified them by their interests pretty early on.
Yeah, you mentioned something that I picked up from a couple of other people that I visited with about the broadening themselves and getting out into other areas. And I think Ed Miller particularly was talking about some of the agricultural students that maybe more focused. Could you describe that or explain that a little bit better? How we try to get students to expand their horizons, to be more well-rounded students, and not only just for competition, but just as outstanding students,
individuals. Yeah. It's a real challenge to get students to think about going beyond focusing on just their degree and their career, and to think about perhaps more long term what their thoughts might be. I was just my son graduated from OSU last year, and he's talking to his company about being stationed overseas, about taking a position overseas. He didn't ever take advantage of an opportunity to go overseas now, other than when we traveled, but not academic work. And I think it would have really, I encouraged him to, but I think it would have really helped his career to be able to have had that experience, to have gone overseas. And for example, to get that, what it might be like to live overseas and work.
Of course, part of what you're talking about is perhaps getting out of their comfort zone, taking classes they're not used to, perhaps even taking extra coursework that maybe takes another semester to graduate, maybe study abroad that extends their, a lot of them are focused at 4 years, I want graduate school. So it's a little tough sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah, it is difficult, yeah. And work experience is also something that can be very important, either an internship, a formal internship, or work experience related to what they think they might want to do.
Well, Gail, what is I'm getting a sense of the conversation, maybe a little more specific. What would be a typical profile for a student who's probably likely to be successful in our Scholars Development Program? What would be some characteristics you'd think about?
Well, I would think that they would need to be pretty self-motivated, because they're usually not going to be very successful if they have to be told everything that they need to do. I think they need to be able eventually to have confidence in themselves. I remember one of our current state legislators talking about how his friend applied for a Truman, I think it was, but he didn't take the risk of doing it and regrets that he didn't follow through with that. So I think they have to be, to some extent, willing to put themselves out there, to be risk takers. I think they need to be willing to try new things and to find out, maybe to have the opportunity to explore what they're good at. So that requires trying different things to find out what they're good at. And persistence. I think they need to be able to stick with, they need to do well in school, but they need to be able to stick with their interests and work on, figuring out what their interests and strengths are, and then work on strengthening those things throughout the years. So.
Well, by any measure, OSU students have been very successful, Gail. I mean, we're all proud of that, Oklahoma State University, and in recent years, the national scholarship competition. In addition to their preparation through the Scholar Development Program, what are the other factors that account for our remarkable success we've had? I mean, give credit, certainly Bob Brown, to the professors who've been part of it. And where I picked up on this was with Lewis when he talked about sort of the OSU student. Could you speak to that a little bit about why our students, they seem to like our students? What qualities and characteristics our students have, do you think, that appeal to committee members?
I think in general that they're very genuine, that they're not, don't have so much the sense of entitlement that maybe a student from an Ivy League or some other institution may have. That, and so I would think that would probably be a big part of it. That, they're just very honest and open people and hardworking students.
Lewis Blair alluded to, and I hadn't thought about it before, about our land grant background, the types of students we attracted, and Ed Miller picked up on that a little bit.
The service-oriented students,
orientation and leadership development through 4-H and FFA programs. Any thoughts you have on that?
Well, and I think it varies depending on the competition, because I think that's certainly true for the Truman, but I don't know that maybe is quite so true, say, for the Goldwater so much. But certainly we have the history, being a land-grant institution, the history of being involved in service and serving others.
Speaking of students who have been successful, can you share some success stories, students who have been successful in leadership competition as students and later on in life? And there's some that stand out in your mind, some special stories?
Well, certainly. I mean, I know Kim Sasser is probably the student that I know the most. She finished her degree in nutrition and was a Truman Scholar. And she used that to get her degree in public health and went on to work for the Texas State Department of Public Health, trying to address the issue of childhood obesity, which is clearly a major concern in this country. And then they moved, and she's working as a manager of a large food service in a large hospital. But let's see, of course, Shannon Farrell, with his experiences getting a Truman and going to law school and coming back and working with outreach here, is so he's certainly, and of course Blaine is just Blaine Gredeman with his getting the roads, and I know that it's been difficult for some of the faculty that he chose to go to Iowa, but to have the opportunity to go to the Iowa Writers Project is really quite an amazing accomplishment, and I'm very proud of him for accomplishing that.
I sensed in an interview with him that I was maybe not going to be his last stop. And that somewhere in the future it could be able to stay back, which would be great.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of Blaine, what was can you talk about what Blaine Gredeman's been, OSU's first Rhodes Scholar, I guess an only Rhodes Scholar at this point, what it meant to Oklahoma State University generally, and specifically to our scholar development program?
Well, I think to give students the sense that even though we're a land-grant institution, that doesn't mean that you don't have a great background in the humanities, and to be able to be an outstanding candidate for such an amazing program. It was really important, too, because it was one of the first, I guess we'd had a few Trumans before that, but it was really one of the first high-profile to be able to say that, Oklahoma State can compete with the Ivies and some of the other programs, and having outstanding students that can go and do really well when they go off.
Did it speak to our students who come from small schools too?
Oh, yes, indeed. Yes, we have had many students from tiny places
like Blaine,
who have done very well. That's right. That you don't have to come. In fact, some of the smaller schools may even offer more opportunities for students because everybody has to be involved.
That's right. If you're going to have a science club, everybody's got to be in it. Whether
Yep.
you're a science club or not. Well, then I think Blaine's when it's something like 40 kids or something.
Oh, if that.
30 some odd kids in the senior class. Mm-hmm. Which if it's in a shot in the arm somewhere, kids say, hey, I can do it too.
Yeah.
That's right. We're talking about some success stories. It's a little bit the same question, but a little bit different. In what ways has the program enriched and influenced the lives of scholar program participants? Scholarship winners and non-winners, both. How's it impacted their lives?
Well, it's really been interesting to be able to watch some of the students.
I apologize for the interruption.
Right. Yes, I need to go. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh my goodness, you're on video.
I know. So we're gonna have to finish this later. Sorry. Some of the students who haven't received funding and yet have still been able to achieve their goals and their dreams, and it's I think of a couple of students who weren't selected for some of the British scholarships, but they were able to find other ways to do that, and because they opened themselves up to the possibility that might be something that they could achieve, then they got to Cambridge or Oxford or wherever, and were able to be very successful students when they went. That's really, it's tough for the students when they don't. Sometimes, particularly ones that get into the finals and then they're not selected. It can be very difficult for them, but they've learned a lot about themselves, and they've grown as individuals in trying to taking the risk. And as I mentioned, that's one of the things I think that's important, is to be able to take the risk.